Good day, everyone. My name is Rebecca Lilly for the International Association for Energy Economics. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar entitled Large-Scale and Decentralized Solar Photovoltaics, the Portuguese Case. We are grateful to Dr. Isabel Soares, Dr. George Souza, and our distinguished panelists for today's timely discussion. We are also grateful to the Portuguese affiliate of IAEE for co-hosting this webinar with IAEE. First, a little bit about the International Association for Energy Economics. We are the largest association specializing in the field of energy economics and provide a forum for the exchange of ideas, experience, and issues among professionals interested in the field. The organization produces 2 professional journals, a newsletter, and holds conferences and virtual presentations, along with a host of other products and services that you can find at our website at www.iaee.org. If you're not already a member of the association, we welcome you to join. A few housekeeping matters in regard to today's webinar before I hand things over. First, this webinar is being recorded for those that cannot participate in today's live event. If you have questions for the panelists, please click the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom window and type your question. We have allocated sufficient time at the end of the webinar to read and answer them. And now, I would like to introduce you to Dr. George Souza, President of the Portuguese Association for Energy Economics. George, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Rebecca. Let me just say a few words on behalf of APEN, the Portuguese Association for Energy Economics, to welcome all the participants to this webinar, which is organized jointly with the International Association for Energy Economics. APEN has been committed since its foundation in 2015 with the creation and dissemination of knowledge in the energy economics field. And in this regard, it has promoted several regular initiatives that join people from different grounds to discuss cross-cutting issues in energy and environment. This is the case of the most relevant events organized by APEN, such as its annual conference that took place on January this year, and the meeting on energy and environmental economics that took place this month, more precisely on the 7th of May, organized by our colleagues from Aveiro. Additional to that, APEN is also promoting a series of webinars on topics related to the energy and climate transition. It is therefore with a great pleasure that we launch today this webinar on solar photovoltaics. Other webinars from APEN will be announced in the near future. For this particular webinar, APEN acknowledges the support for IAEE and thanks Isabel Soares as moderator of this session, and the speakers, Rui Pestana and Ricardo Leite, for having accepted this invitation to be with us today. Their knowledge and their vision are decisive for the informed discussion that we aim on the challenges and opportunities of solar photovoltaics in the Portuguese system. So let me finish wishing you all a very successful and fruitful webinar. We'll now hear Isabel Soares. Isabel, I pass to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. Good afternoon to all of you, our colleagues, and it is a pleasure to present our speakers. First, we'll have our colleague Rui Pestana. She is advisor system operator at the Portuguese electricity and natural gas transmission operator. And he will speak on solar photovoltaic at larger scale for VHV transmission networks, requirements, challenges, and opportunities. And then we'll have our colleague Ricardo Leite. He is head of special projects and technical officer at Independent Energy. This is a company belonging to the GALP group. he will speak about the reality and the nature of the future of decentralized energy production. So I thank you once more to both of them. And I hope this afternoon will be a very fruitful, we'll have a very fruitful webinar. So please, I give the floor to Rui to start his speech.
Okay, thank you very much. I will start sharing my screen. I hope everything is fine. First of all, I want to thank the invitation to present this topic about the PV at large scale in Portugal. Thank you very much. The topics that I'm going to cover are the requirements for PV if they are connected to the very high voltage, okay, to the transmission grid. Some technical challenge that this kind of technology requires, some opportunities also, some part of the investment, and also some technological solutions. And then I will focus, of course, on the financial issues, since this is a conference related to financial investments and also. So going to the requirements. As you know, typically every country had their own requirements for PV, for wind, but in Europe, ENTSO-E and the European Commission launched a rule, a grid code, we could say that, is requirements for generators. And this was passed in 2016. Normally, the countries had like 2 years to pass to national legislations. In Portugal, it took a little bit more time. But anyway, since last year, since 16th of March, we have already got the details for the Portuguese. It's very important in our case because the legislation split the size of the units in types A, B, C, and D. And the type D that we'll cover in my presentation is for the big plants that typically they are connected to the transmission grid, that in Portugal is bigger than the 110 kilovolts. And also if the size of the plant is bigger than 45 megawatts, okay? So the description splits the two types of technology. One is what they call the synchronous machine, because it's the old-fashioned machines that comes back from Tesla times. And then what we have, it's a new definition. They say power park models, where the PV it's there and the full converters for wind. And so now we have two types. We could say the old-fashioned, the synchronous machines, and the other ones has a lot of power electronics, okay? One of the major requirements related to power electronics is the fault right-through capability, since when we have faults in the grid, we have voltage dips, and normally if the plants don't have this capability, they tend to trip, okay? And this, of course, is bad for the system, because we need the generations to supply the load, okay? In the past, we had issues. These are the biggest events that we had back in 2009, when the issues was still in wind, okay? PV in Portugal is not, is still in small sizes compared with the wind penetration. But at that time, back in 2009, we had 2 faults, and we lost like 1,300 megawatts of wind, which is bigger than one nuclear power plant in Spain. So this was a big surprise. But anyway, even this year, in the 30th of January 2021, we had a similar event in Spain, and we tripped, and we lost also almost the same amount of power. And because of the reducing inertia in the system, and this is well known nowadays, and also in the United States. We had a power swing where the frequency in Iberia, so Portugal and Spain, just went down for 200 millihertz, and then they come back around 50 hertz. Okay, in Europe, the nominal frequency is 50. In the United States is 60. So just the numbers here. Okay. So as I mentioned, frequency control is really very important. Okay. And we have this requirement that means that if the frequency increases, if the load increases, the frequency decreases. The frequency is really the best variable because it sums up the active contribution of all generators, of thousands of generators in continental Europe or in any system, and to be equal to the millions of customers that we have in the system. Okay, this is just one variable, okay, which is the frequency, which enables us to know if the generation is equal to the demand. Okay, and this is very important. Normally, PV don't pay too much attention to this requirement, but of course, if you have this PV on the distribution grid on your rooftop, it's not a big issue. But if we have this kind of plants all over the country, connected to the transmission grid and taking over all the synchronous machines, this requirement is vital to keep the lights on. Okay. There are also some requirements that they are too technical, but typically is a fast reactive current response during faults, where they have to respond in case of milliseconds, and here also in the frequency in seconds. Okay. For instance, for PV, sorry, for PV in Portugal, we have put a requirement, and this is also useful in the United States, is to add sky cameras that allowed us to detect the clouds that diminish the solar radiation, and this enables us to increase to have a better power forecast of the system. Sorry. Other requirement that we have also, it's the OPGW, it's the optical ground wire, that enables us the fast communications and connectivity between the system operator and the plant. Sorry. About the challenge, the bigger issue that we have in Portugal is really the grid capacity. The load, the peak load is around 9,000, which is this green line. But all the requirements that you have actually in the system overpasses this. Of course, the installed capacity is around 1,000 megawatts, 1 giga. But of course, there is being granted already capacities in several ways. And basically, we have almost committed to appear in the next years before 2030, like 12 gigawatts, okay, which is already above the load, but this is still manageable because, of course, PV will not be full power at everyone at the same time. Okay, this is the one that's already committed to the distribution grid, which is also 4,000, which is very surprising, taking consideration that this amount of power it's on the medium voltage. Okay, and this will be a challenge for the distribution grid if they have like 4 gigawatt and the majority on the distribution grid. But the reality, sorry, is that the requests that we have been receiving for the distribution grid, plus so when you have here, this is the green line is from the distribution grid. We have requests in the special regime, and there is another way to have access is to get a direct access with REN. REN is the Portuguese TSO. But if you sum up all of these requests, you get a number that looks astronomical because it's like 2,253 gigawatts. And as you can see, the load is still 9,000. So this means that we cannot accept all these requests, and it's going to be very tricky to assign capacity and to see which vendors or which promoters will finally install it. Okay, of course, if this is all of this is constructed, this is not feasible. It doesn't work. We need to curtail all of them. So this is not feasible. Okay, so we still have to manage how we're going to surplus this technical challenge of the grid capacity. As I mentioned, actually we have 20 gigawatts of installed capacity in Portugal. This is the evolution of the peak load in the last 10 years. It was around 10 gigawatts in 2010, but then it came down. Last year, it was around 9,000. This year, because we had a cold winter, we came up a little bit higher, but still above 10. But we can see that we have peaks of generation of 12 giga, which means that this mismatch basically is exported to Spain. Okay, so the other thing that we see nowadays is the request of land to install PV is so much that people are starting to get upset, and the use of land for agriculture is starting to be an issue. The other issue that is facing is also the fact that sites near the substations of the TSO and also on the DSO, we foreseen that they're going to be, this is a true reality, this is already done. It's a 45 megawatt plants near Ourique in Alentejo in the south of Portugal. Okay. Regarding the market arrangement, the question, as you know, nowadays there is no feed-in tariff for PV now, so they have to go to the market. People tend to have PPAs, of course, to secure the investments, but the trader that goes to the market, in my opinion, is the one that's taking the risks. Okay, so forecast errors that cause market deviation, it's in a range of 10%. Okay, they will require reserve margins, and reserve energy that typically is more expensive than the day-ahead market. Okay. Because of the market arrangement nowadays, all feed producers are not paying market deviation. So this is really not a nice way to manage compared with the new ones, but it's what we have now. But the feed-in tariff is only guaranteed for 15 years. So we hope that after a while, this situation will foresee. Regarding curtailment, Portugal looks very good. We have already more than, regarding wind, which is more than 5,000 megawatts, and even they're surplus the load during the night. As you can see here, typically the wind is here in the green. Sometimes it overpasses the load, but we have not curtailed wind basically never. Just one day for a few hours, and it was like 2 years ago. Okay, so we don't have a curtail history in Portugal because until now the capacity was well done. But the good news is that solar and wind has a negative correlation. We have less wind during lunchtime. Okay, and this means that we can build PV on top of wind, and there will be no big issues, at least in the next years. Okay, so this is what I mentioned. The fact is that if the capacity of the PV exceeds the load, then it's expected to curtail. Okay, but we still have two options. One is the hydro storage in Portugal. We have like 2,600 megawatts of hydro storage pumping, and also the export capacity. Okay, so this allows us to have more installed capacity than the load, And this is the way that we are using now to manage the install capacity. Regarding voltage control, this is another issue. Normally, on the distribution level and also the old power plants, they are controlled by tangent fee, so reactive in proportion to active. But for PV connected to the transmission grid, we have already plants at Eurica that are providing voltage control, which means that if the voltage of the grid increases, they will absorb reactive power, and if the voltage of the grid decreases, they will inject active power. Okay. The only issue we have here is, of course, for this to work, and they have to work 24 hours a day, is the night issue. Okay, so the inverter can in reality provide reactive power during the night. The only thing is that we need to put the inverter working during the night without solar radiation. But this is technically feasible. The issue is that it causes more losses, and so there is also that issue to take an account. Regarding opportunities, the good news is that we have this electrical storage. Okay, this was included already in the second solar auction in 2020, only for the transmission grid, and this enables us enable the promoter to go to the market with a more secure power delivery, so they can minimize the deviation and so the penalty in the market, and also the electrical storage will allow the fast frequency support, which of course, since solar doesn't have inertia, cannot provide synthetic inertia or something like that, you can use storage to back up PV. So this is a very good combination, okay? These are the amounts of hydropower that I mentioned in the back. These are my opinion. So I believe that this electrical storage should not be used for arbitrage. Okay, it should only be used to capture solar production during the day and minimize deviations and put it as you can see in the next slide, and allows us to minimize the peak load during the night. Okay, so this is the histograms of solar from the last years. As you can see, as we build more PV, basically what we are doing is in this part of the diagram, we're just increasing the size of the installed PV, but of course we cannot increase a lot of energy doing this. But if we add storage, we can add the number of hours that PV can provide, and this is very useful for the system and for the promoter. Okay, and especially the curve from Kaizo a few years back. But you see that since PV is going down, you have like 13 megawatts in 3 hours with a ramp, and this is really bad for the system. Okay, the storage will allow us to go ahead on this. Okay, regarding market arrangement, this is still in discussion with our regulator. The idea is that the new PVs must go to the market and they must offer down regulation at zero price. Okay, this means that if we curtail them, or if we request them to down regulation, the power that they have already, the energy they have to sell to the market, they will not be penalized by that. They will receive the money from the market, but they don't need to produce. Okay. In Europe, there is this classification between balancing responsible party and the balancing service party. And this means that this one is the one that goes to the market and is financial responsible for the deviations. A new trial that's going to happen in Portugal is the floating PV. Okay, we have a lot of dams in the north of the country and also at Alqueva in Alentejo. EDP, which is our main producer, has already put a pilot on Alto Rabagão of 220 kilowatts, and they launched now the installation of a 4 megawatt in Alqueva. And the Portuguese government is going to launch the solar auction this year in 2021 with this technology. Okay, this is not yet public. The size we'll see how much megawatt will show up in the next months. Typically, this auction happens on summer, July, August. Regarding financial issue, this is the prices of the feed-in tariffs by technology. This starts in 40 euros and goes to 740 euros, which is completely out of the scale compared with the domestic retail prices. But anyway, you see that this is photovoltaic at micro scale, and this is photovoltaic at a bigger scale, and the prices were around 340, which is really big compared even with the prices that we had in the Iberian market in 2020. As you can see, is like 10 times more. Okay, the good news, at least for the clients, because someone has to pay this in the end of the day, is that these prices are really going down, and we hope this will. The tendency is, of course, is to go down, and we see how the market goes. Anyway, these lower prices in 2020 in Iberia was due to the pandemic. This year, 2021, the prices are really higher because of the CO2 costs. They are surprisingly high in 2021. Okay. Regarding the auctions, to wrap up, in 2019, they auctioned 1.4 gigawatt in 24 injection points in Portugal. Some small on the distribution, others large at the transmission level. But the lower bid that we got was last 14.76 euros per megawatt hour, and this was at the time the lowest in the world. Okay, the average was around 20, but they had another issue. That was you could do a discount on the market price, or you could do a contribution to the market, and so that's why there was these two types of offers. In 2019, it was almost the same. The size was less. There's only 12 injection points, reaching 700 MVAs. On the discount, the lower price was around 11 euros. And the contribution, we got negative prices here. But anyway, this means that they will have to pay the system during 15 years. And after that time, they could do whatever they want and get the market price. Okay. And with this, I finish. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. As we have only 2 questions up to the moment, and I would suggest to answer, if you have time, Rui, to answer this now 3 questions. First of all, Catarina Paricio tells us, sorry, I didn't listen why solar and wind are not compatible together. It's about the frequencies. First question.
Regarding that question, no, it's a question of the availability of wind and the availability of solar. It's a meteorological issue. You have more wind during the night, and of course you have more sun during the day. Okay. So that's why we say it's as a negative correlation, because this means that in reality we can add PV and it doesn't reduce the contribution of wind. Okay, for that question.
Okay. Okay. You have another question from José Pilar. If the markets are running properly, would not storage arbitrage contribute to a larger efficiency?
Yes, in theory, true. My idea is that besides the arbitrage, of course, it can be useful. the question is that it makes sense for you to install more PV, okay, store it, and then deliver it on the end of the day, okay? This allows us to reduce the peak prices, okay? Of course, if you have storage, you can do that to help the client, okay? Or you can use the storage just to make money, okay? So when I said that is to help the system, okay? I'm not thinking about the individually, I'm thinking about the system. So that's why I mentioned that.
Okay.
Okay.
José Vilar has also another question. What can be the impact on Spain-Portugal interconnection with a so large increment of renewables, which probably is going to be similar in Spain? What about the possibility of Portugal to export?
Yes, until now we have been able to export excess of wind because when we have too much wind in Portugal, it doesn't appear the same thing in Spain at the same time. Of course, in Galicia, which is near, they have the same pattern. But since Spain is 5 times bigger in Portugal, they have different wind directions and wind speeds and everything, and they then can accommodate that. The big issue here is, of course, is the interchange capacity between Spain and France, which is very reduced. So in reality, the European Commission has put a target to each TSO to provide 15% of interchange capacity for 2030. And of course, we are working with that. That number is still challenging for us between Portugal and Spain, and we have like 9 tie lines. But for Spain and France is more challenging. They are not able to reach that goal. And the solutions that they have been facing now is to put cables in the sea to connect Spain and France.
Okay, thank you. One more participant asks you, the average MIBEL price are for all hours of the day or not?
Yeah, yes, the average is for all hours of the day, yes.
Okay, before going, yeah, please.
No, okay, maybe we could proceed and answer the rest on the end of the.
Yeah, but we have no more questions for the moment. So all done. Okay, thank you very much. And now, Ricardo, please, you can start your presentation.
Okay. Good afternoon to everyone. First of all, I would like to thank for this kind invitation from APN and from IAE. It's really a pleasure to be here today with you all and to share a bit of my experience on solar, namely on the decentralized energy production. So I will, So I will split my presentation in 5 topics. Oh, I lost it. Yeah, so I will talk about the principles of the decentralized energy production. Then I will talk about the Portuguese market. I will bring some real cases related to the PV to see if these are not a good deal. And then I will talk about the energy communities, and to finish, what is next. So what is the future? Try to understand what we have here in the future. So starting with the centralized energy, let me tell you that nowadays the decentralized production in Portugal, it's for self-consumption purpose. So this means that the electricity that is being produced, it will be used in the same way. So we will produce and consume the energy in the same place. So this will reduce the electricity needs from the grid, and of course will have an impact on the electricity costs, so the electricity bill will be lower. This kind of solution is suitable both for B2B and B2C. This means that for houses, industries, offices, restaurants, hotels, so every kind of activity, it makes sense to have decentralized production. So saying this, the second point here is that we really need to make sure that we size the systems for the electricity needs. So if we are talking about self-consumption, this means that the electricity that I am producing should be the same electricity that I need for that installation. So I need to know exactly what are the needs, the loads in an installation, to be able to design and to size an installation for those for self-consumption. It is important to highlight that there is surplus energy sometimes, that the surplus energy can actually be sold to the grid. Nevertheless, the price that will be paid for that electricity, it's much lower than the avoided cost of electricity. So so if I want to reduce my payback, the economics of the project, I should try to bundle the surplus electricity and try to size an installation with the most self-consumption profile as possible. So talking a bit about the Portuguese market related to PV, I can tell you that until now we have around 1 gigawatt of installed capacity in Portugal of PV, of solar. And almost half of that it's on the decentralized production. So until 2016, we had some feed-in tariffs. So as you can see from the blue bar, we had a lot of micro and mini production that were that had attached a feed-in tariff. But since 2016, the market started growing on the self-consumption. So, and now we are just building for the centralized production is being used for self-consumption needs. And this actually happens by two main reasons. The first one is that we have been seeing a very significant decrease on the system's prices. And this decrease is mainly due to the fact that the models and the inverters have actually decreased a lot their costs. The second point here is that Portugal is actually one excellent place to produce PV, to produce solar electricity. And we have in Portugal almost the double of the sun hours that some of the North European countries have. So if we are talking products with the same price over the Europe, I would say that in Portugal, they should have a payback almost in half of the time that they would have in a northern country. So this means that actually we don't need to have feed-in tariffs, and makes all the sense to use this kind of electricity for self-consumption purposes. Looking a bit to the future, and according to the national roadmap for carbon neutrality here in Portugal, there is a big increase on the solar until 2050. If you can see by the yellow bars, so this one is for centralized production, so the big parks, and this one here is for the decentralized production. So we can see that by 2050 we can have something around 5 giga of decentralized PV installed in Portugal. So it's a growing market. It's a market that is going to grow a lot over the coming years. And this growth, it's aligned with the global market. So as we can see from this chart, the forecast is to have a constantly increase on the PV all over the world. So, and to give you a final idea about the Portuguese market, it is a market with a lot of competitors. I can tell you that actually our competitors with different kinds of approach and strategies in the market. It starts from the installers that are looking for one opportunity to close a deal, to close one sale. It goes to electricity provider companies with financed solutions attached. But one thing to bear in mind is that the players are moving. The market is moving from a product sale to an asset management approach. So, and the goal of the leaders is search for long-term relations with customers, to have services-oriented approach and focus on maximizing the customer lifetime value based on win-win solutions. So it is a market, as I said, with a lot of competitors, but is moving, and the strategy of these players is moving with the market. So it's a very interesting market, but also a very demanding and competitive, as I told you. But at the end, I would say that the big question here is, does it make sense to invest in PV for self-consumption? And for that, I bring two real cases that we have. The first one is for B2C, so it's a house. It's a house with consumption during the day because they have people in the house during the day. And we have installed a plant of 2 kilowatts, so it's a small plant, but in which 91% of the produced electricity will be self-consumed. This means that this will allow to the, this is an investment below the 4K, and will give the chance to the owners to save something like 600 euros per year, and this is as really a payback of 5.6 years. We are talking about systems that will last for 25 years, and at the end, this means that it is a very interesting investment for the owners, because they will have a much higher IRR than if they have the money in the banks or any kind of other investments. So it's a very interesting investment for the B2C clients. And if it is for the B2C, it is also for the B2B. For instance, this case is for a retail case. It has a payback of 5 years. And actually, once that the size of the installations increase, the price per watt peak decreases. But normally, also the price that these kind of clients pay for electricity also decreases. So I would say that we can have paybacks around 5 years. In some customers, we have reached 3-point-something years of payback. So it is really a very nice investment. It's an investment that can be made over financed solutions, in which the customer share the savings with the investor. So every month he will be paying to the investor a lower amount than the one that he will have from the savings. So I would say that it's a very interesting market, and it is a really interesting investment to do with capacity, of course, to do it, or do it through a financed solution. And the market has also a lot of players with these kind of solutions. One of the things that we are start building here in Portugal are the communities, the energy communities. And the energy communities, they have appeared mainly by two reasons. I would say that the first one is related to the lack of available space for PV. And I can give you an example. For instance, if we have a building, an apartment building with a lot of apartments, there will not be enough area to build PV on top of on the rooftop of the building. And this means that actually it can bring to a situation where people want to have PV, want to have self-production, but they don't have enough space. So if we combine this kind of customers with customers with available area that can actually have bigger size installations on their rooftops, this means that they can be actually producing electricity, and that electricity can be used in other customers where there is no available space to have the PV. So this is one of the reasons why the energy communities are now starting to appear in the market. The other one has to see with different kind of consumption profiles. So if we think, for instance, in a house, we know that, and if we can think that we are out of this COVID situation in which people spend a lot of time in their houses, but they tend to go to normal situation in which they actually move out of the houses during the daylight, and to go to the offices. This means that the electricity load will decrease during that period. And actually that is the period in which the PV installations are producing. And this is an example of a house that actually when it reaches to the weekends, it's normally the period in which the persons are within the houses. So in these periods, the consumption will increase, and probably it will be bigger than the size installation that they have in the rooftop. But also we have another reality, for instance, with an office building. In an office building, they actually will consume the electricity during sun hours. So it will be over this period. Probably they will not have enough space on the rooftop of the building to build the enough solar size installation. But during the weekend, they will be out, they will not be working. So over that period, they will have surplus electricity. And if we combine these two realities, we can see here a community of electricity in which the electricity can be used during weekdays to go from the houses to the offices, and during the weekends to come from the offices to the houses. And this can actually, it's very interesting because we can have different profiles, we can have different kind of customers, and try to combine all of these and build or a microgrid, or we can still use the grid from the public grid to have this kind of energy transmission. But it's very interesting, and actually the market is start evolving to and evolving to this kind of solutions. And this is already a reality here in Portugal. We are starting with the first communities of electricity, and it's very, very, very interesting solutions. So wrap up, I'm going to the last slide, and now is to talk about the future. So how it will be the future. For me, there's no question that the decentralized production will be part of the future of the electricity market. For me, it's more than clear that this PV, decentralized production, is already part of the future solutions, and we will combine these solutions with storage, with EV charging, and we may look at an electrical vehicle not only as a consumer, but also as a mobile storage system that can interact with the grid. To look at the microgrids with the distributed assets management, we can look at the demand side and think in smart buildings that will act autonomously and will adjust the consumption and providing flexibility to the grid. And we can try to think and combine all these kind of solutions into a solution for the future. So over the last years, we have been watching the markets. The market moves in terms of solutions, in terms of costs, in terms of players. So I would say that the future market, it's a market that will combine all of this. And I would say that it's a future will be amazing. It will be very challenges, and I dare to say that will be a future that will be very supported on data analytics, and to enlace the consumer relation with the infrastructure optimization. So it will be a very, very interesting future that we'll have on front of us. And for my part, this is what I had to share with you all. And now I'm here for any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Ricardo. We have several questions for you, and one still a question for Rui. I will start with questions that were put to your presentation. First question, Londi Nadvela. I hope to pronounce it correctly. What are the macroeconomic implications of energy transition in Portugal, in sense of the effects on economic growth and employment rates? Wow, this is a very complex question.
Yeah, it is.
Very complex.
It's very interesting also. Well, let me know I'm talking always about my opinion on these subjects. It is my opinion that these kind of solutions, that the PV will make the market prices decrease. This means that we can have electricity at lower prices in the future. And this is very important for the economics of a country. It is very important because the electricity price is one of the bases for the economical growth. So for me, it's clear having lower prices, and we are having it on the centralized energy production, as we can see from the auctions. We reach minimums, worldwide minimum. So it's, as you can see, 11 euros per megawatt. It's much less than what we had in OMIP. I think Rui presented 33 last year. That will increase this year. So I think it's very, very interesting for the market, for the economical market. Also, we are creating a new type of economy, the green economy. And this economy will actually bring a lot of new opportunities to the market, a lot of new business. That means that we will have for sure a bigger number of people working in this. So the employment rates will react for this reality for sure.
Okay. Rui Pinto is asking you, for the B2C example, is it already a smart option for a consumer to combine PV installation with small-scale domestic size battery or not?
Okay, Rui. I would say that for now, it makes all the sense to have PV in houses, since you are using the house during the day. So if you have any kind of consumption during the day, if you have people in your house, it makes sense to have solar for self-consumption. I'm pretty sure that the batteries in the short term will be a reality and will be part of the market. At nowadays prices, at the market prices that we have in this moment, I would say that the battery is something that I would not suggest to use right now. I would suggest to wait for a few more months, years, and actually using the system and probably increase the system at that moment. And one of the good things of PV is that it's a modular solution. This means that it can actually grow, and once that we have batteries at a good rate, at a good price, it will make all the sense to have it on the houses and probably to even increase the installation. I don't think it makes sense to wait until that moment, because having such a low payback for these solutions, it makes all the sense to start investing right now on these kind of solutions. And then when the markets have good and more lower prices for batteries, start thinking in having a battery and increase the size of the system.
Well, another question, which are the best, more efficient panels and inverters on the market for self-consumption?
Oh, interesting. So we have a lot of different suppliers in the market. I will not talk about brands. When we talk about brands, we talk about sometimes the ones that we like the most because we are used to work with them, because we see some kind of advantages in that brand, in that equipment. But to tell you that the offer is very big. So I would say that I would say that my concern related to panels, for instance, is to choose a good brand of panels, and we can have that from the tier one companies that every quarter Bloomberg communicates to the market and say what are the most reliable brands that we can have in the market. So I would suggest to go to those brands and to choose one brand that actually gives any kind of support that we need and gives you a reliable product to use.
Okay. Another question from Novella. Do you believe the energy transition to be just for both producer and consumer in Portugal, and why?
Yeah, well, I would say that the producer, I would say that the consumer, the consumer, it can be the producer and the consumer at the same time. So it's a producer, and it's interesting because actually the consumer can be part of the future, can be part of the transition. The energy transition can actually be more independent from the grids, taking having a view about the electricity prices that is going to have in the future. So I think the consumer and the producer are actually in these markets at the same point, and that they are prosumers, so they can be both things at the same time, and that is a very big change in the market for what we used to know from the past.
Okay, thank you. We have still two questions for you. About the future, what is Paulo Vargas asking? About the future, what the role of FSPV in production of energy in Portugal?
Well, actually, Paulo, I don't know exactly what will be the role of FSPV in the production of electricity in Portugal. I'm pretty sure that will be part of the future. It will be part of the solutions, although I cannot tell you exactly how, in which role and in which size it will be part of the future.
Okay. And Gilles Afonso asks you, is it viable to store energy produced during the day in batteries as a family point of view, for example, or should one just sell the energy overproduced?
Well, I think we have already talked about this issue in the previous points in which we were talking about batteries, and it's I would say that is the same that Rui Pinto, or it is very close to the one that Rui Pinto has already placed here, and I would say that probably nowadays it's not viable yet from the economical point of view, but we will be for sure in a short term. It will be a solution.
Okay. And finally, Laurent Nicolas, your business model assumes that power will always be invoiced based on power consumed. What if the commercial regime moves to a price per capacity, which would help finance the network? Would it be still profitable for decentralized producers?
Look, Actually, it's very interesting. It's a very interesting question.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. So the question here is that if we start increasing the costs that we attached for these kind of solutions, we are probably going to I would not say kill these kind of solutions, but probably we would make to decrease the interest that clients have for these solutions. For instance, in Spain, a few years ago, they have built a new tax for PV, and that really impacts the market because the market almost stopped during a few years due to the fact that we are taxing these kind of solutions, or we were increasing this kind of the increasing the costs for these solutions, and the market stopped. So I would say that this is a market that is auto-regulated, so it's a competitive market. And what I can see and what I can tell you for the experience that I have is that if we start taxing and if we start increasing the prices and the costs related to PV, probably we can take the risk to kill this market, at least for while the market is still evolving and growing. And I would say that at this moment it would not make any sense to have this kind of costs.
Okay. Well, Harry Santoso asks for how it would be possible to get presentation because he was in another seminar. But I think, George, the presentation will be on Appin site, right?
And in fact, this webinar is being recorded and it's available at the IAE website. It will be available, the webinar as a whole. And the presentations we can also make available at the Appin website, yes.
Okay, okay. So thank you so much, Ricardo. And we have still questions for Rui. What is the role of the hybrid power plants without storage in the future? What are the major limitations of this concept from a TSO point of view?
Okay, thank you. Before I answer that, I would like to follow the last question that because of this capacity markets, just to mention that, as you know, the production costs nowadays are 80% in capacity, 20% in energy, and then the bill is like 20% in capacity and 80% on the energy. But, and that's why the question was well put. But the pool markets are marginal cost markets based on energy. There are some products that they are rely on capacity prices, but we see that the regulators, Acer, are not keen in capacity payments. But anyway, our regulator in Portugal launched recently, a week ago, open debate on the tariff system, on the grid access, and also those kind of tariffs. So it's a good discussion, and I will invite everyone that are always complaining about grid tariffs and capacity payments and everything to join our regulator site, where that consultation is starting to happen related to that option. Okay, going back to your question about the hybrid. Nowadays, we have been pushing, I mean, from the TSO point of view, we have been, people are saying that they have a grid connection for wind, and they want to use that grid connection by connecting PV, and so, and creating an hybrid system, okay? But this is already my personal point of view. I mean, this concept of hybrid, putting PV and wind looks nice, but of course, when we grant that capacity, we look to the profile of the wind and we look to the profile of solar. And when we grant capacity, for sites are really related to that type of technology and that type of infeed. Okay, so even when we gave a capacity of 100 megawatt from one site, of course, we are not expected they would produce 1 megawatt every hour of the year. Okay, and that's why that's allowed us to give more capacity to the others. Okay, so this concept of hybrid, of mixing wind and PV looks good in theory on the grid connection point of view, but in system aggregation we may have some issues. Okay, but for instance, going to the decentralized case, we see that our legislation said that we can have small units, but we can only have with one technology, which for me, I don't understand, because if you have PV during the day, we could have a small turbine to provide some wind production during the night, and this will help the production of the system. Okay, so I'm in favor in hybrid systems at a lower voltage to combine PV and wind, but not at a larger scale. Okay, going back to also to the other hybrid definition about solar and storage, I would not say it's an hybrid system, because basically we are just storing some part of the energy and deliver it later. Okay, and the source of energy, it's always the same. Anyway, we need to have an easy way to identify the real source of energy to do a good forecast. Okay, because if we have like a site that it's a mix of sources, the TSO effort to forecast the output of that plant will be very difficult, and then if the forecast is bad, we cannot operate properly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have a last question that I think I would put it to both of our speakers. It's a question put by Fabio Pereira. Since the Portuguese government has been talking a lot about railway systems, what do you think of the importance of this new energetic paradigm in railway system, considering the regenerative braking and the onboard energy storage systems and PV? I would start with Ricardo, and then I think that if Rui could also give his opinion, it would be fine. Okay, Ricardo, please.
I would say that having railway, it would be for sure a way of increasing the consumption of electricity. And actually the market and the future, what we see here is that probably is moving for the electricity much more than for other type of energy consumption. This is something that is natural to happen. It will be for sure part of the future, and it will be a way of going forward to the neutral carbon that we pretend to have. Of course, that the systems have to be the most efficiently possible. Once that we start regenerating the electricity on a train, of course, that it will be electricity that will not be needed to spend in the future. So I would say that this actually combines two solutions. It will combine a solution of green energy with a solution of energy efficiency. But of course, that the big consumers will have an impact on the PV side, or at least on the production side. I don't know, Rui, if you agree with my view.
No, yes, I agree with you. But I think the regenerative braking, it's already an option that is being used at the metro and everything. So it's not really a restriction. It's a way of efficiency, even to break electricity, to break with electricity it saves the effort on the brakes and everything, so it's more efficient way to do it. But and using PV on the trains, or no objections. If they have the roof, they can use it. Regarding the onboard energy storage, I don't see a use now, because they are already electrical connected to the grid, to the catenaria, and they are already, and so sometimes they give the energy back, and sometimes they take the energy. Okay, so once again, if of course the cost of storage is very low, we could put some storage there, but in reality they just take from the grid and put it on the grid. So I don't understand why you need to have storage on a train. But maybe it's my bad understanding on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to all. We have some comments congratulating APEN for this webinar, and I think now we have just finished, and I would pass to Jorge to close the session. Before that, I want to thank you so much to both speakers and also to the audience that had a very, very good interconnection with us. And I hope to have you all in our next webinars that will be in some weeks. Okay, Jorge, please.
Okay, thank you very much. So very briefly, I want to thank again Isabel for moderating this session, and Pestana and Ricardo Leite for the wonderful presentations that you made, and all the participants with all the dynamic that you had on this debate at the end. I think it was very interesting. Of course, this is an issue which has very different branches and can be exploited in very different directions. This was a contribution specifically on the technical and some economic terms of the solar photovoltaics, both from centralized, meaning utility scale, and decentralized. And just a quick note, the next webinar will be by the end of June. So that will be 13th of June and then in July. So the next two webinars would be on June and July of APEN. So thank you very much. And Rebecca, back to you. Thank you.
IAEE wishes to thank Dr. George Souza, Dr. Isabel Soares, and APEN, and our outstanding speakers for an outstanding webinar. This webinar will be available on IAEE's website for future download later today. If you're not a member of IAEE, we encourage you to join by visiting www.iaee.org. We thank you for attending, and I officially close this webinar.